with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Those online, I'll just ask you to hold any questions, or feel free to put any questions that you have after we give our presentation in the chat. We'll kind of give the microphone to the people in the room here first and see if that answers any of the questions, and then kind of tag in with the people online. Just to start out with introductions, my name is Mitch Forney. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Columbia Heights.
My name is Ursula Brandt, and I am the City Planner for Columbia Heights. And I'm Rita Trapp. I work for HKGI, and we're hired by the city to help them through with this comprehensive plan amendment process. So I'll be giving the presentation this evening. So you all know why you're here, but we are going to talk about the comprehensive plan amendment for 4300 Central Avenue Northeast. The site location, I'm sure you all know, but just to kind of orient everybody, sometimes you're not used to looking at an aerial. You're used to seeing it on site. So we are talking about the property that's on Central Avenue as you drive up between 43rd and 44th and looking towards the west, towards Quincy. And right now you can see an empty parking lot down the hill and the stormwater pond in the back. And so the property, we can go to the next one. It's a 13-acre site. As you all know, it's currently vacant. There is the stormwater pond that's been there for a number of years. Previously, it was a shopping center, and we have some pictures on the next slide. The parking lot is located adjacent to the street with the topography. And then on the picture on the next, we have the history of the site. So I actually grew up in Columbia Heights, and that shopping center has been there since I was a kid, so a really long time. The Rainbow was there forever. And then at different times, there was different types of uses. The last uses in there were the Slumberland, the Ace Hardware, the Dollar Tree, and the Meineke Car Care Center. So in the late 2000s, early 2010s, these are the businesses that were there. And then the property on the next slide, you can kind of see as it started to close down, and it was purchased by Hy-Vee. And it was in a lot of disrepair. So between 2016 and 2021, it was purchased by Hy-Vee. And the city worked with Hy-Vee to work on a tax increment financing district, which is a way that the city can fund other improvements in the area based on the fact that a site is redeveloped. So that's a financing tool that the city can use. But no project materialized at that time. There was a lot of discussion. Things changed over time, and the market changed. And so Hy-Vee never did construct the store. On the next slide, it talks about 2021, 2022, the city had a partnership with Lattice. Lattice is one of the developers here in the Twin Cities. They helped with acquiring the property, and they facilitated the acquisition and cleanup of the property. So there's a nice photo of that transition to the site that we have today. They were thinking and are currently still thinking about mixed use development, which means a combination of residential and commercial, probably some apartments in that site. As we move to the next. So the concepts are still being explored. You can come and sit down too. Concepts for the site are still being explored. I know nothing has happened lately. There have been multiple tax increment bonds that have been extended, so that's a financing mechanism with the intention of having development happen. One barrier to development is the comprehensive plan. The plan has been, and the discussions and all of the concepts as we explore on the next slide, have talked about commercial and residential. And so the city is initiating this comprehensive plan amendment process to take one part of the process and take care of that so that it's easier for the development that's being talked about both in the city and with the developer to occur. So this is just a drawing to illustrate some of the concepts that have been explored. There aren't specific drawings. There is no project that has been approved and that we're waiting to see construction. The concepts being explored that the city have seen have some combination of residential and commercial. Generally, the apartments, mixed use, which is apartments with commercial, some type of single family, and some type of residential amenities. We have this kind of broken down. We wanted to show some examples. So on the next slide, when we're talking about apartments or commercial, generally we anticipate that they might be located closer to Central Avenue just because that is the commercial corridor. And then on 44th Avenue, that is also another primary street. So there may be some commercial along 44th. Those buildings would probably be multi-story in height. You can see just some examples from in the Twin Cities. And this is just to give you an idea of what we've been seeing as potential ideas for that site. When we look at the west side of the site, it's possible that there'll be either some single family, some townhouses, or some row houses. These will generally be shorter, so 2 to 3 stories. They'll be more residential in character. They may be attached, they may be detached. We just don't know. The biggest thing to talk about is that we will need to have the stormwater pond still, and so where that location is may influence how all of these uses lay out on the site. So it could be that the stormwater pond is still along Quincy, or it could be that it's more interior to the site. And those are things that the developer has to plan for and identify. It is anticipated that interior of the site hopefully would be parking, stormwater, residential amenities like maybe a playground or some walking paths around the stormwater. None of that's been decided, but those are the types of elements that you typically see in a block development like this. And then the hope would be to continue sidewalks all the way around the block, as well as have sidewalks that go to the interior of the site. So these are ideas. One element to note with the tax increment financing that I had mentioned before, the development will allow or enable the city to do some other improvements in the neighborhood. We know that there are road improvements needed, sewer improvements needed, and stormwater improvements needed. So the project will help the city accomplish those elements that have been a concern for the neighborhood for a number of years. In addition, the stormwater will be done in combination with the Mississippi Water Management Organization. They are already part of the conversation. And so they're already at the table, and stormwater has already been discussed at the city with them and with the developer. So we know that there are stormwater issues that need to be addressed in the neighborhood. And this project is intended to help address some of those issues that have been happening. Again, these are just examples of things. So when we talk about kind of what the design might be, Columbia Heights has had a number of developments over the last few years. Hopefully you've seen some of them just down the street, across from Immaculate Conception Church. In those areas, generally the city has been supporting elements like having buildings nearer to the street, sidewalks, parking behind and under the buildings, stormwaters that aren't just ponds, that are more integrated, kind of like the bottom right picture, where they're a little bit more, they're serving that purpose, but they're also providing a nice amenity for the neighbors as well as for those that are living in the site. So again, these are just examples. As the development happens, the city will be working with the developer, and there'll be more conversations about what could happen on the site. We also want to take an opportunity to note that MnDOT is continuing to design the upgrades and improvements to Central Avenue. This is a separate project, but we know that is something that people are conversing about, and there are preliminary designs that are going to be available or are currently available in March. And this is an example. If you have questions about that, staff could provide a little bit more detail. These are still in the works, but the reconstruction is slated for 2028. It will reduce Central Avenue from 4 to 2 lanes and include intersection and access improvements, and also the ability for the bus rapid transit F line to extend across Central Avenue. So this is something that we want to acknowledge. It's not tied specifically to the project, but the timing may come together for both the development and the improvements on Central Avenue. So I gave a lot of background. I do want to cover why we're here. So just to kind of come back to the beginning, the city's current 2040 comprehensive plan shows this site for commercial, and it only talks about commercial. It doesn't talk about having residential, apartments, townhouses. And so the amendment that we're proposing would allow that flexibility for a mix of residential and commercial. And the city is soliciting input from you if there's concerns about either the comprehensive plan amendment or things that they can continue to communicate with the developer as concepts are being explored about what the community is concerned about. The change will go on the next slide. It talks about commercial to what's called transit-oriented development. This is a land use category that exists currently in the plan. It is one that is all along Central Avenue in certain sections. to support things like the F line that I mentioned. And so the intention is that we would have a mix of commercial and residential. The market's changed a lot, and so it's difficult to have a long corridor of only commercial. And so that's why having this mixture provides more flexibility and hopefully the ability for something to happen on this site, because it has been vacant for a number of years and something that the city has been investing in and supporting and partnering on. I believe Aladdis still owns the property. They're still in conversations with the city on the project. So yes. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult when they're doing it, when they're not there all the time those are things that we hear. Right. Those are sometimes what we hear when we have developments. The question, yes. So the first question was who the developer is and whether they're still going to be involved in the project, and who owns the property. So Aladdis owns the property currently. They're the ones that have been involved for a few years, and they will continue. And they are the ones that are supposed to be keeping the site up. Just double checking that. Mitch actually will answer more. You still have to repeat the second.
Yes, the second question was about clogged storm drains, and what I know a lot of people in town like to refer to as Lake Rainbow. So the idea is, and in the past, we've worked with Aladdis, so anytime this pops up, we reach out. Mm-hmm.
So how do I feel? It's not being given any protection whatsoever.
So they have flushed the storm drains on the parcel, but obviously it needs to be constant maintenance. And so, yeah, and they are very responsive. And so as that stuff, you let us know, then we can have them take a look at it. So this project will fix that. And I can definitely talk to you a little more offline on that stuff, but that's further down the road. Okay, I'll hand it back off to Rita here.
All right. There's just a couple more slides when we want to talk about the process, and then we can answer any questions. We can go back and have more conversation. So where we are in the process, the city identified this as a need of adjusting the comprehensive plan to make it easier for development to happen. As you can see, this is actually the first step in the process, is to notify the neighborhood and to understand if there are concerns or questions or the information that you all need and the information the Planning Commission, the council will need to consider this amendment. So we're at the beginning on the left. There will be a public hearing at the Planning Commission to consider this on March 3rd, and you probably will be receiving a notice. If you received a notice for this meeting, you'll be receiving a notice that says the Planning Commission will be considering the comprehensive plan amendment. That's a required part of the process. The neighborhood meeting is optional. It's just something the city wanted to do to make sure to hear of your concerns before we get to the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission will be considering it and making a recommendation to the City Council. And so the next step will be making a recommendation to the City Council. If they would approve it in the metropolitan area, you also have to have the Metropolitan Council approve that. So that's kind of the technical process. The biggest message is we want to hear your comments and thoughts and concerns tonight. If you want to share them with the Planning Commission and the Council, you'll have an opportunity to share them directly with those individuals as well. We are collecting comments. Other than we have a transcript going. I was like, there was a lot of comments, but we have the email that kind of covers those comments. But we'll be collecting comments that folks have and sharing them in a summary format with the Planning Commission and the Council along the way. Next slide. So I almost got to the last slide before. What we wanted to do this evening is answer any questions that you may have. This may be the first time that you're involved in this kind of a process. This is very early stages, meaning there will be an opportunity once an actual concept is proposed for folks to hear about the concept and provide feedback. But we are at the point where, because of this change, we'll be able to allow and enable a mix of residential and commercial to occur on the site. So that's really what we're focused on this evening, is to understand if there are concerns. If you liked something that you saw in terms of kind of what things look like as examples, we can certainly pass those along, and we can certainly answer any questions that you have. So with that, it sounds like when there's questions here, that having you speak into the mic, or I'll repeat it, and either Mitch or myself or Ursula will answer those questions. Oh, yes, thank you. If you want to come up. This is Kendra. She works with me. We have comment cards too, so if you would feel more comfortable, we have pens and comment cards that you can fill out. There's also a QR code, and there is 2 survey questions that just ask, you know, do you have any concerns? Do you have any things that you think we should be considering when the city goes through and looks at developing this site? So that's another option. We're trying to give you different options about whatever you're comfortable with to provide feedback and to ask questions. So with that, anybody here that wants to ask a question or make a comment? Yes. And I know I was debating that. There, that way the people online.
Sure. To this gentleman's point, he's lived in the neighborhood longer than I have, I think, but we live on Quincy now, and I've lived in Columbia Heights for over 20 years, and I know the history a little bit. There used to be houses on the other side of Quincy back in the 60s, and they all flooded every year, and so the city had to raise them all, and now we have what we have. And so to this gentleman's point, I have been planning ever since the rainbow came down, the old rainbow came down, waiting to see what was going to happen and planning to, my mind is changing, but originally I thought I don't want to see houses on that side of the street again, but I know it's not as simple as that, and modern underwater storage and all kinds of ideas could happen to rectify what nature wants this area to be, which if it's not the lowest point in Columbia Heights, it's damn close. And the flood zone thing I was aware of as well. I've seen those maps, which is a little spooky when you see your house across the street from a FEMA flood zone. Okay. But to his point, and to our main concern, living across the street and seeing what happened when the pumps did clog up here recently, and our neighbor was bailing water out of the house he just bought a week earlier and things like this. It sounds like a broader area than just the footprint here would need to be addressed as part of this project to keep the water moving. And do we know if in fact Lattice and the city are conscious of this history that he and I are bringing?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So yes, not only the city is well aware of the problem, as you'd say, we've talked to multiple council members in the past. The developer is well aware of it, and the watershed is well aware of it. So Mississippi Watershed Organization has actually pledged money to help solve the problem alongside what the infrastructure improvements the city is going to be making. And the developer is working in hand with the Mississippi Watershed to identify ways that they can integrate stormwater retention and treatment throughout the entire site. So it's not just a single pond that, may or may not do its job, where they can actually use tree trenches and other things in the site to help, reduce the use of that stormwater amenity, and then also improve that stormwater amenity so it's not just a hole with a fence around it, and it can actually be brought into the site as an amenity like a pond that you can walk around or something like that. Yep, exactly. While also from the watershed's standpoint, ensuring that water is being treated so that as it gets to the Mississippi, not only the flow is not affecting the neighborhood, but also all of the contaminants are to the level that they can remove the contaminants from that water as it flows directly to the Mississippi is handled. So there's already research being done by an engineering firm that has been hired by the watershed district to analyze the entire site and what stormwater is needed for that, but also the stormwater that flows into this site from the rest of the city, kind of east of Central Avenue. There's still a large watershed where the neighborhoods to the east and the Central Avenue redevelopment flow into the site before flowing downriver. So it's how do you not only solve this site, but also solve for that water that comes from the rest of the city as well. So it is a big part of the project, and having this project helps the city pay for those improvements and everything like that. So one second, let me give you the microphone here.
Part of the main problem over the years, my house has never had one drop, because the day I moved in, I paid $375 and the city reimbursed, it was $800, but $375 of it to put a plastic manual or automatic shut off. That has always worked at my house, and I have a ball valve that you're supposed to have on the sewer thing by your washing machine. So I pour hot water in there once a week when I do laundry. The point is, all the other houses that flood, took 4 floods of 4 to 6 feet deep before they got that shutoff valve. As soon as they got the shutoff valve, they didn't have the, how do you say, unclean unclean sewage water backing up to their house that was pressurized from the storm sewer drains. So there is a cross either under Rainbow, up above at LaBelle Park, wherever the cross is, or the head effect pressure of the water there. There's a cross between the sanitary sewer and the storm sewer, which we all pay for separately on our water bill. So that's what Gary Peterson and all these people for 40 years have tried to negate. But now that simple solar panel with the light that I did this for a living, you can get $100 or $200 sensor to put there when the water comes up and mount it on the pole, and it will call the cell phone of the person who works at the city. I have to look out and wait every time it rains that much to see when the light goes off, and then I have to call. Now it's the police non-emergency number, and it used to call the city employee for 15 years. So the short term is we need to mount a cheap sensor on there that calls through the cell phone to whoever's responsible so they can come out and, as he said, clean the debris out of the pump. But typically it's just a matter of that drain I'm talking about on 44th on the middle of the parking lot.
Yeah. Yep. And I can definitely talk to our public works department, because like you're saying that unfortunately I'm not the city. Yep. Nope. Yep. I understand what you're saying. Unfortunately, I'm not the city engineer, so I can't tell you. Yep. Yeah. And yep. And that's the key, is we really want to solve this issue. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sounds good. I appreciate the input. And it's definitely something that our engineers will be taking into consideration. Yep. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. With that, do we have any other questions this evening in the room before we go to the online? Nothing at this point. All right. With that, I'll hand over to the city planner to read off the questions from online.
We do have one question online that was posed in the chat, and it is, are there plans for the surrounding streets like Quincy, 43rd, et cetera, considerations for increased traffic, closures during constructions, et cetera? So at the moment, we do not have plans for the actual development of the site, but those are things that we will require once a development is proposed, like a traffic study, and then working with the construction to make sure that nobody is cut off from their house or transportation.
And with that, also with the redevelopment of Central Avenue, there are considerations at the intersections of 44th and 43rd being implemented with that redevelopment plan to ensure that the traffic from the site and the proper like signals and everything like that getting onto Central is going to be put into place for that to happen. So specifically, MnDOT did not have a signal planned at 43rd and Central for the update, but with this development going in place, they are going to have the developer pay for a signal for that to make sure that there's enough traffic, or that the ability to get on and off of Central at 43rd is maintained by the developer. So this stuff does kind of go forward into the actual planning. And as the developer brings forth, you know, designs and everything like that, we'll be doing similar items like this neighborhood meeting and public hearings and everything like that. So I strongly suggest everyone kind of keep an eye on this as we move forward. They will have an environmental assessment worksheet that'll be going out to the community as well this year. So there's going to be a lot of areas to kind of get involved with this project as we move forward, but this is kind of just the comprehensive, this is the start of the process. So with that, are any other questions? Yep. Oh, nope, you're good. Let me just hand this off to you.
I came in late, so I didn't understand. So the one on the left says proposed, and it says transit-oriented development, and you can explain that in a second. And then on the one on the right, is that no longer in play, or?
No, thank you. Great question. And it like you said, it's when you come in a little bit late. Ursula, would you be able to go up to the proposed and the current zoning or comprehensive plan? So currently the property is designated in our comprehensive plan as just commercial, which would only allow for commercial uses to be on the site. And so this comprehensive plan amendment is amending it so that it is shifted to transit-oriented development, which allows for commercial and residential to be posted on that site. And then Ursula, if you could go down to the bottom, then that is just a general idea of what a transit-oriented development site looks like without kind of getting into the plans and everything, showing a mix of apartments and commercial or, you know, whatever mix of stuff kind of towards Central Avenue, reducing density as you get towards the neighborhood in the form of single-family homes, townhouses, and then kind of the central being parking, stormwater, amenities with the, you know, possibility that, as the gentleman up front had stated, you know, if the soils aren't great where the pond is currently, maybe the pond is kind of shifted further to the western portion of the site. Yeah. All right. No other questions online? All right. So like Rita had said, we have our comment cards. Otherwise, make sure you scan the QR code. Make sure you keep an eye on the city website and Facebook. We'll kind of end the question period, but city staff will be hanging out around here to answer individual questions. And then if you have other items that you want us to know about, make sure you submit those. Otherwise, Ursula and myself, our emails are on the city website, the community development director and the planner. We are always available Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. So feel free to stop by or give us a call at City Hall. So with that, I'll kind of end the session here and kind of hang around for questions.